Depending on how closely you've been following the lost media community, or this topic in general, you might have seen this one coming, and I partially blame myself for letting it get to this point because I've been meaning to make a specific update video on the topic, and still plan on doing that. But for now, it definitely wouldn't hurt to mention it here, because it fits this theme so well. As much as I hate to say it out loud, Slamfest 99 is at a pretty large dead end as of now, for a few different reasons that have resurfaced since my last video on the topic. Back then, we were feeling a little more optimistic about the potential leads we had come across, simply because there was so much more to work with at the time. Even though most of the contacts we had reached out to at the time either didn't respond to us or didn't have any new information, there were a couple people with connections to important companies that were helping me reach who I needed to reach. Not only that, but in the meantime, we had done some looking into a claim from earlier on in the search, where a user mentioned having seen Slamfest being rebroadcast on a streaming site back in the early 2000s. The website was called Shoutcast, and specialized in allowing users to host their own streams, which more often than not were rebroadcasts of shows from television and the web. It was through this lead where we thought that if a rebroadcast of Slamfest on Shoutcast did exist, we could figure out who was doing it through connecting with the old community, especially since there were trails that could lead us to old users. But in a very fitting story progression for this search, everything kind of fell apart all at once. We quickly discovered that Shoutcast is impossible to navigate for the fact that the old community has dissolved over the past decade or so, and without any idea on who might have rebroadcast Slamfest, there's no way to track someone down. Another user on the contact team did email one of the biggest channels, simply asking about their time using the site, but we never heard anything back. At the same time, the majority of my leads with those important companies fell through, either because it was confirmed they weren't able to search through archives, or the contacts went cold. Two of the biggest takeaways from this were the fact that Golan themselves, the PR company that helped put Slamfest together, said they were not able to search their archives because of how complicated they've become over the years. Meanwhile, direct contact to Nintendo was made from a higher up, but as far as I'm aware, Nintendo never responded to the inquiry about Slamfest at all. Separate from these dead ends, however, was a huge find for the search that I'm sure you heard about back when it broke. Ed Espinoza, who helped put on the event and has been helping me directly with leads, found a whole archive of photos he took at the event and published them online. Not only was this the first new content from the search in months, but myself and the contact team were also able to pull a new lead from these photos. But this lead in itself also quickly turned cold, and our messages to the important people were never answered. They haven't even read them. We do still have more people to reach out to down our list, but with every new person we contact, there's less of a chance they'll be able to point us in the right direction. At this point, unless something completely unexpected happens at OnStream, Golan, or somewhere else we've tried before, the only way Slamfest is going to resurface is by someone in the right places hearing about this, finding a copy, and uploading it online. There's not even a guarantee we'll be able to find it by tracking down anyone associated with production, because at this point it definitely feels like no one involved had any part of the broadcast saved. This is another entry that I'm a little disappointed to include in the video, and I guess that's probably going to be a large theme for it, because you hate to see topics that you enjoy searching for end up hitting dead ends, especially when you feel like they should have been found already. You could argue that Slamfest has more circumstances preventing its archival, but this topic is quite different from that. It's a pilot to a popular kids show, and one that I'm sure you've heard about before. It's the Super Y pilot, and I actually don't hear this one get discussed that much at all anymore. It seems like one of those topics that was really popular when there was a lot to do with it, and then once everything dried up, more users seem to lose interest in it completely. That's understandable when it feels like you've done everything you can do, but there have been a couple interesting updates that have occurred since my original video on the topic. Everything happened so fast back then, I can't believe it's already been 2 years since that video. But shortly after the video went out, there was a major update from PDog64, who had been a big contributor to the search. PDog had gotten in contact with a university in Canada that claimed to have a copy of the pilot in their possession, and that they would get around to digitizing it sometime in early summer. I was skeptical of this for the fact that they not only agreed to supply the materials so easily, but also for the fact that it would take a few months to complete. And in fact, the rip was delayed a couple times, which felt like a bad sign to me. Thankfully, I ended up being wrong in this case, and PDog did indeed get the file, but to our surprise it wasn't the full pilot like we were expecting, and only the audio, with no visuals. Apparently, this audio was from a later recording session based on some users claiming that an earlier version had existed online at one point. Eventually, the audio was shared within the community, leaked, and then uploaded by PDog to help ease any trouble that might have been caused by re-uploads. But no trouble came from this release as far as I know. But no matter how you look at it, the audio is not the full pilot, and that's when the server revisited their leads and tried to make contact with people that worked on the pilot. This led to several months of finding new names associated with the show, reaching out to them in any way possible, as most crew did not have contact online, and in every case, the leads didn't have any content from this early iteration of the show. The only other pieces of content that did resurface were a handful of new images showing the protagonist and a few logo designs, but no animation. Finally was my attempt at helping the search when I got an email from a viewer who had come across my original video and claimed to have a contact that used to work at Cup of Coffee Animation, the studio where the pilot was filmed. They said there was no guarantee that this person they knew had anything saved from the pilot, but it would be worth a message, so I waited along with the rest of the team, hoping that this would be a turning point in the search. But at that point, so long had passed without hearing anything back, it started to feel a little strange, so the team encouraged me to reach out again and follow up with a new email. This time, the person informed me that apparently they had never even reached out to their contact to begin with. I guess they forgot or something, but would get on it right away. Though as of a few months ago, I have yet to hear back again. Similar to Slamfest, it feels like there just isn't anyone left to contact, but that's not to say there aren't people out there that could have this pilot. I don't believe it's something that was never saved, so it's just going to take reaching the right person for it to be uploaded. One of the topics that gets brought up every now and then by my viewers is one that I made a video about a long time ago, and honestly, I forget that this topic even exists sometimes, because it's been so long without an update, or even a clear direction on where to look next. Apparently, it's still pretty popular to those who are aware of it, and that's the SpongeBob baseball lecture animation. Do you guys remember this one and how much traction it gained when the topic was new? The thread on the Lost Media Wiki forums is at 10 pages, but it almost went a year without a 2022 post and was last updated in January of 2023. For those unaware, this mystery refers to an animation of SpongeBob that was played at a baseball stadium with the original post stating, "Back in 2005, I was on a trip with my family and some friends in Texas. While we were there, we stopped by a baseball game. Before the game started, an animation played of SpongeBob giving a lecture about having fun. I don't remember much about it, but I know for a fact that a SpongeBob animation played before the baseball game started. The thing is, I have been unable to find it anywhere online." Ever since then, the topic has had a dedicated search effort, and there was quite a lot of progress made on it. But overall, the vagueness of which stadium it was played at, and the difficulty in contacting baseball associations has really put the brakes on this one. Pika Fusion and Co. were some of the biggest contributors to the thread, and narrowed down the team to the Frisco Rough Riders a couple years ago, which led to a variety of contacts that were never really answered. The goal was to get some confirmation on whether or not they had some kind of collaboration with Nickelodeon during any of their games, but eventually, this led to some confusion about which stadium the game was played in, when the game was played, and even what teams were involved. We constantly tried to refer to archived schedules of the games that were played, but in most cases they didn't quite match up with what OP was saying. and if you look at the thread now, it's entirely made up of users who are trying to get caught up with the topic, because it hasn't been updated in so long. I didn't even realize I had posted in the thread as recently as late 2022, but I suggested maybe contacting Nickelodeon is the better way to take the search if we want to see a revival in it. We do have a general year and date for when the animation played, and because we're searching for this, believing it's an official animation, there would be no reason why Nickelodeon wouldn't have a record of it. I'm pretty sure someone did contact Vincent Waller about that on Twitter, where he claimed that he didn't remember the animation, but also said that it didn't mean it wasn't real. I remember after the Nicktoons zombified bumpers and the SpongeBob Got Milk commercial were found, people were kind of at a loss for which piece of SpongeBob lost media to search for next. So if you're one of those people, this topic could definitely use your help, and seeing things from the Nickelodeon side of things might make the process move a little faster too. For this next segment, I'm going to combine a couple smaller Cartoon Network related topics that felt like they could have easily been found back when the community became aware of them, but haven't resurfaced very much at all. In fact, I'm not even sure how many people still remember them, despite gaining some popularity years ago. The first one is that cat news topic that originated from a storyboard artist on Twitter, which was a bit of a mystery within a mystery. The story goes that this person had recalled seeing a short or skit that was part of a larger show on Cartoon Network that featured real cats dressed in ties. Apparently, they couldn't find anything about it online and asked Twitter for help, which led to a variety of replies that guessed it could have been a skit from Mad or something similar, with the time frame given being late 2000s to early 2010s, no later than 2013. I remember mentioning it in a video specifically to try and get people to look for it, but nothing ever came of it, and it seems like the topic was dropped pretty quickly after all the guesses were debunked. Like I said in the original video, if this really was a short within a larger show, then there are only a handful of options it could be. But without any actual proof that it even aired on Cartoon Network, we could be looking in the wrong place. To this day, the speculation that it could have been a rarely aired short, similar to the Forgotten Hot Dog TV in that time frame, still stands. It's also possible that even if this short is remembered exactly by name, there's a chance it could be lost media in itself, so that would require an extra step to actually finding a recording of it. But maybe with another round of awareness about the topic, it can help someone remember it. The other Cartoon Network topic I want to mention are the Uncle Gus pilots from the Big Pick Weekend, which was also mentioned in the same video with Cat News. This is another topic that I wanted to bring attention to at the time, in hopes that someone with a recording could come forward with it, because I believe that's the only way it'll get found. There are no real leads with this one, and no one's searching for it, with the exception of occasional comments from viewers who want to see it found. To me, it's always been an interesting topic, for the fact that it's the final Big Pick Weekend pilot to have never resurfaced in full, which also means it's likely only going to show up from a recording when it was aired on Cartoon Network. Interestingly, it seems as though the Spanish dub of both pilots have since resurfaced and can be viewed on YouTube, which is what I believe happened with a couple other Big Pick Weekend pilots too. They ended up resurfacing in Spanish before their English version was found. The Lost Media Wiki states that the first pilot, aired on July 14, 2000, was re-aired between August 25th and 27th during a weekend marathon, and finally had a third airing on December 14, 2002. The second pilot, however, was only aired on November 23, 2001. In the past, I've tried to contact the creator, but he has no social media presence, so it's going to rely on home recordings to get this one found. For all the content from the channel that's resurfaced over the past few months, I'm surprised this one is still missing. I cannot think of a more fitting topic to include in this video than the last one here. If Slamfest or the Super Y pilot are perfect fits for this video, then what we're about to talk about is 100 times better, because it's time to revisit everyone's least favorite search that should have been found a million years ago, Me and My Friends. Now, I won't get into every little detail here, really that deserves its own video, and I'd like to make a video talking about the entirety of its search history, but the task is so daunting I never know where to start. I feel like at this point, even people who don't follow Lost Media at all know of the insanity that is this topic, and for today, there are a couple points I'd like to highlight that really make me and my friends one of the best dead-end searches I've ever been a part of. We haven't even talked about me and my friends in quite a while on this channel, with one of the last mentions of it being a stream where we revealed new pictures, but I can confirm that behind the scenes, there is still a small, dedicated group of people who want to see this found. They're pretty much the reason why we're still getting the new bits of content that we are. But what if I told you we could have had the pilot by now? The madness could have ended late last year, and I wouldn't be narrating this segment right now if that was the case, but it wasn't. It's something I was careful not to mention while the lead was active, in the event that we ended up with the pilot, but at this point, it's basically just a factor that demotivated everyone involved with this search. To summarize the last couple years of this search in one segment, they have been a wild ride. We've gotten in contact with users who were searching for the pilot a decade before the Lost Media community picked up on it, new photos and especially new contacts were made to many people associated with production of the pilot, but most importantly to keep in mind were all the rejections we got in trying to find a copy. This ranged from some of the crew just not having any content from it, to a few who didn't remember the project at all, but most importantly, people that heavily implied they had content from it. And to be fair, that's where we got all those new photos from over the past couple years, the crew members who did have it saved. But as for the pilot itself, I would be lying if I told you guys we didn't reach people with copies of it on tape. In fact, for the longest time, that was the most difficult part of the search, simply trying to find people that had those copies. We know the pilot was rejected and only screened by the higher-ups at Nickelodeon. There was a 6-year gap between me and my friends and the final show, which was basically remade entirely from that original version, and the question became who still had it. And there were 3 key people that I can recall who allegedly did. To keep their identities private, I won't even mention what positions they had on the show, but I will say, one of the individuals claimed to have a tape in storage, but never responded to us after that, though we believe this might have been dance rehearsals and not the filmed pilot. The second person that was contacted initially showed interest when asked about the topic itself, but once a tape or recording of the pilot was mentioned, they ended the conversation abruptly and said they couldn't help us, but that they hoped it would show up for us someday. And finally, the last contact, and the one that mattered the most, was reached out to late last year, after a months-long conversation that didn't even involve the mention of a tape of the pilot initially. Burr, who has been an active search member for a while, was the one who reached out to this individual, and after a few months of talking, a recording of the pilot was brought up in passing, which led to the individual confirming that they indeed have a copy of the pilot on tape and have watched it many times before, providing a picture as proof that it existed. At that point, the question became if there was any way to get it online, and so it was asked. Burr handled this well, and the individual mentioned that they would handle it. I'm pretty sure I was in the middle of Five Below when I saw the Discord notification for that one, and I almost freaked out in the middle of the store, believing that this could truly be the end of the search. But unfortunately, before any transfer of the tape occurred, the individual got back to Burr abruptly and mentioned that they would have to check in with their former boss before ripping it. And after that, we never heard anything back. As far as I know, none of these people currently work at Nickelodeon, so I'm not sure why they would need to check in with their former boss at all. I suppose it could have been to make sure Nickelodeon wouldn't come after them for it, but this interaction was 6 months ago. So unless they're really taking their time with this, I would say it got rejected. Burr even sent a follow-up or two over the course of these 6 months, simply asking what the outcome was, but we never heard back on that either. I'm thinking it got rejected, and the person doesn't want to tell us the bad news. My fear from the beginning was that their boss is someone who we've contacted before that shooed us away, which means we were kinda screwed from the beginning. But I can confirm the tape was definitely real. This was a crew member who we reached out to that worked on the pilot. And even if for some reason they had heard about the search and wanted to troll us with a fake tape, word never got out, so it's not like they did it for attention. We are basically back at the very beginning of the search with almost no contacts left to go through, and plenty of blocks in the way, even if we do find someone else with a tape. I have no idea how this one is going to end up online, but either way, it's definitely a piece of lost media that's hit a dead end. Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. Be sure to check out some of my other lost media videos. Thanks for watching, and until next time, Finn.